Hello and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, editor-in-chief, and today we're tackling the impact of wildfire smoke on indoor air quality and the role our industry plays in mitigating its effects. Today's special guest is John Otero. He is the franchise business coach for 1-800 Water Damage, and he has over 35 years of experience in our industry. John holds several certifications, and he speaks on a national level. Welcome back, John.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's always good to see you. Thank you so much.
Yes, likewise. I'm super excited. We tackled water the first time. Now we're going on to the other side of the industry, fire, smoke. And I think it's very relevant right now with everything that's gone on from January until now. We were just talking about how we're kind of in between the Grand Canyon fire, right? You're in
Mhm.
Arizona, I'm in Las Vegas, and then today we had a fire here. So we're actually seeing this in real time. So what better way than to talk about this and kind of spread some awareness and information to those who are watching? So I know was it a couple months ago? It seems like a couple months ago, but maybe not. Canada had their, fires and it blew down into our area and people were feeling some of the effects of the smoke and bad air quality, if you will. How are the lingering effects of wildfire smoke impacting our indoor air quality, not just in our homes, but in our businesses across the country?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as you had brought up, there is a fire that started over in the Grand Canyon, I believe, on the north side. And there's a website, I'm not sure if you knew about it, www.airnow.gov actually will let you know in your area what is the air quality like. So because of the fire that's going on by us in Phoenix from the Grand Canyon, we have an unhealthy air quality. So in what we have to realize is we can also not only talk about wildfires in Canada, but also the fires in even Los Angeles. We're still, we have five 1-800 water damage franchises that are dealing with the Palisades fire. But the wildfire smoke can leave fine particles. They leave fine particles. It could be chemical residues, odors that linger, right, in the homes and businesses long after the fire's out. Because we don't know, for example, let's say with the Los Angeles fires, what burned, right? Could have been gas, pesticides, paint, all that. And that can leave and trigger respiratory irritation, allergies, asthma flare-ups, right? Um, and so that we got to be very careful with that on that. So it can, and what's the other thing is wildfire smoke can travel hundreds to thousands of miles, right? Once it gets up in that jet stream, it can go pretty far. And then what happens then is it has an impact leaving a hazy skyline like here in Phoenix, lower air quality in the area. So yeah, it can affect a lot that you really don't think about.
Yeah, and I would definitely say to your point about it traveling so far, when there's fires in California, oftentimes we get ash that actually makes it up over the mountains onto
Right?
our vehicles, into probably our HVAC, and that's hundreds of miles away from us.
Right.
And so, understanding how things can travel, and maybe you see it and you think it dissipates, but in reality, it doesn't really. And so, how do we attack that as professionals for not only just ourselves and our businesses, but for our customers, right? We're customers at the end of the day and it affects our home life. So, spreading that awareness is extremely important. This kind
Yeah.
of leads me to my next question, and it's, why is professional smoke, soot, odor removal so critical, even away from the fire zone? I think you kind of talked about it a little bit, but I think we're seeing it more now with the amount of fires we've had. I can't even imagine what your home is like or my home is going to be like after all of this clears up at the Grand Canyon. We've now had several fires around us, and we really need to take advantage of professionally having our homes and businesses looked at.
Yeah, so what are some, I guess the question is, what are some of the hidden dangers, right, of smoke
Yeah.
and soot that it can have? Well, the one thing we have to remember is it's not just smoke and soot. It could be acidic, right? and that could have damage over time. The microscopic particles that can end up in walls, carpets, duct systems, and especially like, for example, if we're in LA or the Flagstaff, which is by the Grand Canyon, if that's getting into your duct system, now it's just circulating in the home, right? And so it's important that if we're close to the wildfire, not only are we trying to clean up inside the home, but we got to get those ducts cleaned, right? The coils cleaned on that, because that acidic residue from the fire or wildfires, because again, we don't know what is burning through that process, that can corrode electronics, wiring, metal fixtures. So even though maybe the homeowner wants to just vacuum this up, it really does need a professional cleaning. Now, sometimes, or not sometimes, a lot of the times that, for instance, when I was in the Los Angeles area inspecting the fire jobs, they were having hygienists come out, do air sampling, surface samplings, because in those kind of fires, even though it was a wildfire, many homes got burnt down, businesses got burnt down, but that could have gases, carcinogens, possibly toxins that we can't see. And so it might be important for that homeowner to get a hygienist to get a scope report from them to find out what needs to be done. Sometimes it's not, there could be asbestos, right? Now we're talking a different kind of restoration work, not, now we got to be real careful. So sometimes you might have to have a hygienist come in and do a report for the air quality in the home.
Yeah, and I would say there's just so many layers to it, right? And that's the other thing is you can never be too careful when it comes to your health and indoor air quality. You talked about a lot, and I think people oftentimes don't think about, if you walk around outside and you walk in your home, you've automatically contaminated your space, whether you're on tile, carpet, rug, whatever the case may be. Generally, you take your shoes off with your hands. So now, and then it's just like a whole cycle, right? But you don't think about it. I think in this space we do think about it, right? Because we're dealing with it all the time. But your average everyday consumer, if they don't start to feel well, or maybe they're starting to feel the effects in their environment, they're questioning why. And they're
Mhm.
not going back to the instance of, oh, there was a wildfire like 3 weeks ago. And yeah, I did kind of see smoke and I did see ash on my car, but they're not gonna relate their symptoms to that because they don't really know any better. They'd have to really educate themselves. And so this brings me to my next like burning question because
Okay.
who doesn't love a good DIY, right?
Okay.
So I know you talked about there being some myths around DIY cleanup. Can you share those with us? And, what are the misconceptions? What are the
Yeah.
facts? I think it's extremely important for maybe a consumer who comes across this to understand, hey, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should leave my DIY to like putting some outlets in my wall or like whatever the case may be, but not cleaning up the aftermath of smoke and soot.
Yeah, so I had about four myths, right? And the first one was the myth was airing out the property that removes smoke odor. Opening the windows really doesn't do too much, right? Facts are odors can return when humidity rises, right? Or the HVAC systems circulate the particulates on there. So, are we changing the filters? Now, the one thing also when you are doing a DIY and not having a professional restoration company, those professional restoration companies can actually use digital particle counters to see what's in the environment, right? And then they can actually also show what the particulates are in the environment when they're using air scrubbers, professional air scrubbers, right? Another myth would be regular cleaning products can remove all smoke damage. No. Smoke particles can be deep into the materials and require specialty cleaning. Also, the products we're using are designed for our industry, right? The 1-800 water damage technicians and owners are using products designed for specifically our industry. They're not just using, generic products, and that's important. Another myth, if there's no visible soot, there's no problem. Invisible smoke contaminants can still harm health and property and equipment, computers, TVs over the time because again, that soot could be acidic, right? And really, what's more important is the health. Now, it, we also have to understand a lot of property owners or homeowners, they could have asthma, emphysema, right? They could have infants, which means the smaller ones, our kids have smaller lungs. They're breathing in faster, which means they're breathing in more of the stuff that came in. So we got to be real careful with that, right? It's not just trying to save money. Our health is more important. So having a professional come in, that's very, very important. Um, DIY cleanup, another myth, DIY cleanup saves money. Well, incomplete cleanup leads to bigger and more expensive problems later, right? We've had many times with homeowners like, I could do this myself, and they start getting into it, and then they're calling us and they're like, yeah, I didn't realize how intense this is. And we need you to come out and get this done. And it's not just the cleaning, right? It's the content. So we might need to bring in a content company to take everything out, get it professionally cleaned, because they're doing a very meticulous time when they're cleaning all the smaller items, right?
Mhm.
So it's important to work with also with a good content company, kind of like Blue Kangaroo Packouts. But yeah, so those are some of the myths and some of the facts.
Yeah, it's super interesting to hear those because I think at some points in our life we were like, oh, I could just do that, right? Like maybe before we entered the industry, or heck, maybe even do things that are outside of our industry, but it's like, I could do that. And then later you're like, maybe I shouldn't do that. I should call a professional. That's why there's professionals in these industries, right? And I think you said something that really hit is you can't always see it. And this, I like to think of it like this. When we get sick, we cannot see the germs, the bacteria, the viruses that we're spreading. And this is just on the restoration side of things, if you will. Those are our germs, our viruses, our bacteria that we can't see. And so it's better to be safe than sorry. Even if you don't have any damage, it might be worth having somebody come out and look, especially if you're not feeling well. There's always peace of mind and maybe a clarity that's like, hey, nothing's actually wrong, or hey, we actually did find something, and this is what it takes to solve your problem, right? Because some people can live in those spaces and they might just feel really cruddy and they don't really understand, and that they don't really know who they can call in, and that's where we come in. And I think you guys do a really good job at taking care of your guys' communities, which is great because I think we also are a source of knowledge that our consumers actually do rely on. And this is part of why we film these podcasts, to talk about both the professional and the consumer side of things, because we know when people type something in, they may not end up where they think they're going to end up, but they can learn from some of the stuff that we're talking about, which is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
So, how does 1-800 Water Damage approach smoke and odor restoration differently than others?
Great question. So education is the foundation of success. And we firmly believe in having as much education for our franchise and our technicians and our project managers. So we have many IRCRC classes. We're also part of the Belfour University system. So working along with Belfour and 1-800, we have over 2,000 training videos in all aspects of the restoration industry. And so just this year, we're going to have two IRCRC fire, smoke, and odor classes for the owners, the technicians to take because it's important, right? The more education we have, the more knowledge we have, the more wisdom we have, the more problems we can solve, and that's really important. It's not just about the business; it's about taking care of our neighbors, our communities that we live in, right? Following IRCRC standards, right? The S700 standards, the IRCRC S590 standards, which is assessing the HVAC systems after water, fire, mold, right? And it's also important that when we're talking about this wildfire and the indoor air quality, that we're using the correct amount of air scrubbers, especially the professional grade, right? The restoration grade air scrubbers that are at 99.97%, because that gets down when we're using those air scrubbers, we're getting down to moving down to 0.3 microns. Anything at 5 microns, where it's really going into our lungs and our body. So using the proper amount of air scrubbers with the activated carbon filters helps to improve the indoor air quality and with odor as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to circle back to not just with the education, training, using the right products, also knowing when you should call in an industrial hygienist or a third party to help you through the process. They may be able to help you, whether it's testing or verification, or sometimes I know we see in instances where homeowners are like, I could do it. I think you said that earlier. I could do it. And it's like, hold on a second. Let me have somebody come in and actually test your space and
Yeah,
show you that you have a problem going on. Um, and I think that also helps solidify a customer's choice because you may be put as a customer like, oh, I think I'm okay. I think they just want me to spend money. That's normal for a customer to think that. So, utilizing your other partnerships or collaborations to help with that because I don't think a lot of people understand the effect that smoke and soot can have on your actual body, right? Or your structure. And to your
yeah,
point, electronics, right? It can, if it's acidic, there's corrosion problems that can happen, right? And so I think, just utilizing our training, our education, our network, and then calling in people when you need, the big guns to kind of help you,
yeah.
uh, kind of educate the consumer alongside you, right? I love our industry for that because we're able to tap into each other and utilize each other to help one another.
Yeah,
Um,
the one thing too that we haven't talked too much is we have to make sure the HVAC system is clean, right? And it's not just the ducts, it's also the coils. So using NADCA certified companies, like ducts, can help with that and do an assessment. So it's not just cleaning the air or cleaning the walls. We got to make sure that the ducts and coils are cleaned out. And sometimes, depending on the situation, if their fire was in the home, we might need to replace the whole entire duct system or the AC unit. So getting NADCA certified duct cleaning companies are going to be really nice to work with as well.
Yeah, 100%. They handle the lungs of your building, if you will, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, we handle a majority of the structure, but there's actually an industry who handles the lungs, just like there's an industry who handles the roof, right?
right.
So we know how to coordinate and collaborate effectively, but sometimes your problem does actually have a huge effect on the lungs of your building, if you will.
Yep.
And that's when you need to utilize those who are certified to handle that for you, which is extremely important, right? You don't think about it like to your point when you said, oh, if you have a fire in your home, I mean, if your HVAC system was running, and everything's going up into the vents, like that's a huge problem. It's now not just in your kitchen, it's
That's
in
right.
every single room,
Yeah,
right? And so knowing when to call upon others is extremely important. So,
absolutely.
what role does the restoration industry play in helping our communities recover from the invisible aftermath, like we've been talking about, of wildfires and even home fires or commercial fires, right? There's several layers of the fires that we see, but they all have their own invisible threats, if you will.
Yeah. So what we help with the communities is one, we got to help with the community support, right? So working with the Chamber of Commerce, working with the different companies that we associate with ourselves, offering resources, but we also are there to be empathetic, compassionate, right? It's not just about business. We want to help the residents. We want to help the business recover. For example, and again, we go back to Los Angeles. A lot of those businesses couldn't operate, right? Which affects other things. So by helping the community, it helps everybody. And education, right? Having providing guidance on preventative measures. I think trying to prevent the homes around our area from catching on fire or catching the house on fire. And also educating our customers and the communities about having good indoor air quality and providing guidance on how to do that.
Yeah, and I would definitely say, last time we chatted, we talked about a lot of prevention as well for water damage. And
Mhm.
this is no different. It's a different parallel of our industry, but there are still preventative measures. And I think educating our homeowners on that is extremely crucial. We can definitely learn from some of the stuff that happened in the Palisades.
Mhm.
There were people's homes that weren't touched. Yes, they're going to have smoke and soot damage to them, but they still have their structure, right? They
Yeah,
still have their home or they still have their business. And so some of the preventative and, cautionary things that they did prior to those fires ever happening actually saved their home or their
yeah,
business. And so that's extremely important to kind of share that. I don't really think that we have a fire season anymore. Clearly, we were proven wrong at the beginning of
right,
the year. And so there's no time like the present to, hey, maybe take a look at what's going on around your home or your business and, think, maybe that can catch on fire, right? John and I
yeah,
both live in the desert, so we shouldn't have any brush around our home, right? That for us, that is something that we have to not have around our home. It's very dry where we are. And we see all the time, 4th of July generally, someone catches a palm tree on fire and then like everybody
right.
else burns in the neighborhood. So, taking those cautionary efforts will pay off down the road for you, even if it takes a little bit of time.
Good.
So when homeowners are going through the claim process, it's new to them. Generally, they haven't done one before. It's their first one, and they're filing their claim. Are we generally seeing that smoke and odor damage is being recognized as a covered peril? And how can restoration professionals help clients navigate the claims process?
Yeah, so many insurance policies do recognize smoke and odor damage as a covered peril, even if there's not a direct flame contact. But coverage can vary, right, from policy and carrier. But as a restoration company, it's important that we provide as much documentation for the carrier, the adjuster, the agent, the homeowner, in doing written reports, photos, using the technology like Matterport, DocuSketch. Because what might happen is the owner of the home might not live at that house, right? So that maybe they live in New York or Los Angeles. So having the 360-degree documentation where they can see what's going on really helps out. Doing air quality testing, using digital particle counters, as we talked about, having inspections on the HVAC system, uh, having hygienists come out, right? So there's so many different ways, but really, the homeowners or the clients, they want to review their policy language, for example, smoke damage or fire related losses. So it's really important um, that we as restoration companies educate our potential clients or agents or property managers to look at their policies, what is covered, so that they're not surprised, right? So as restoration pros, we're trying to constantly try to keep that line of communication, not only with the homeowner, the client, but also the agents, the adjusters. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, and I would definitely say we all have the same common goal of getting our customers taken care of and back in their home or business, in a healthy space for them to, have their family and friends. That's the ultimate goal. But I
Yeah,
think, for homeowners who may be stumbling upon this, there's no time like the present to look over your policy, ask
that's
questions.
it.
You
Yeah.
know, I think we've learned a lot in 2025, with the flooding, the fires, even the tornadoes, it can really happen anywhere.
Mhm.
And so sometimes we don't get certain coverage, right? As I'm speaking as myself as a home owner as well. Sometimes we're like, I really don't need that coverage, that's not going to happen, but you never know, so now is a good time to look it over and just kind of make sure that you have the right coverage for you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I know we've talked about a ton, but I think there's another question that I think we should address, and it's kind of how should somebody, particularly a property owner or business owner, look like what should they look for as far as qualities in a restoration professional who's maybe going to come do the work for them? Um,
Yeah.
And I know this is kind of a vague question, but I think it's really important, right? When we get down to it, there's in all walks of life, there's people who do the job right and those who don't always do the job right. And so how can a consumer find the right professional who's going to, do the job right for them?
Yeah. So now everybody can Google and AI and try to gather as much information. So really making sure that the restoration company is IRCRC certified and in that particular services. So it'd be the S700 for fire, smoke damage, right? Fizz water S500, mold S520. So making sure that company has and the technicians are IRCRC certified on that. Choose a company who's done several jobs, right? Looking up their website, asking for referrals. Google reviews. Google reviews are very important to 1-800. I know it's important to everybody, but 1-800 is we have one of the highest Google ratings. And the reason it's important to us is because you can't buy that, right? It comes based off the experience that you're dealing with the clients and with the 1-800 owners. So having good Google reviews is important. Being transparent, right? When we talk to and go inspect the homes, actually trying to educate the homeowner, not trying to close the job, but educate and provide them knowledge, provide them wisdom that what to expect, what's going to happen, um, and then doing should go through the testing, go through the hygienists or scope reports, whatever we need to do, make sure we're going to give them the to get them back to a pre-loss condition. And that's really what they want, right? They want to get back to that time where they didn't have to worry about the fire or the smoke or the mold. I just want to get back to normal life. And we're going to try to do that as transparent and keep our lines of communication as best you can.
Yeah, 100%. I will definitely say the power of technology and the internet. You can definitely look up anybody and anything. And I think, people are actually reading the reviews. They're not just looking
Mhm.
at, hey, you have 4 or 5 stars. They're reading the reviews. And I mean, I do this naturally. If I know somebody has like a 3 or lower, I'll go and read those reviews opposed to the 5 star, right? Like what happened? Because
Right.
they could be a really good company. It was just an unfortunate circumstance, right? I
Yeah.
also and I think too, if the company responded to those bad reviews, that says a lot about their character, their transparency, um, their humanizing their business, right? Because in the world that we live in, we can't satisfy everybody, right?
Right.
That's just the nature of the beast. But I think to your point, empathy, compassion, training, education, certification, transparency is really big right now. Building trust with somebody is really big. And even if they don't select you for this project, they're going to remember you. And I think that's
Absolutely.
the other thing too, is just setting an example and leaving an impression on somebody who, may need your services down the road, right?
That's it. That is it.
Well, John, I'm all out of questions today. Do you have any closing words before we sign off?
No, you know what? Thank you so much for having me. It's always fun to talk to you, and I look forward to seeing you in person. Hopefully at the experience in September. So thank you so much for having us. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. I can't wait to have you on again. And as always, we will see you on the next episode of Ask the Expert. Take
All
care.
right.